Good morning, everybody. I'm Allison. We're at Thomas Sewing Center in Lexington, and this is Nancy Cann. She is the leader of our local Quilts of Valor group. We at Thomas Sewing Center are very happy to sponsor this Quilts of Valor group. We host quilt-alongs, basically where you come in and sew a block for a Quilt of Valor on the first Wednesday of every month. So you don't have to be a part of Quilt of Valor in order to participate in that. We welcome anybody, but the block that you make is going to go into a Quilt of Valor. And today what we're going to be doing is talking about Quilt of Valor's national block, which is the log cabin. And Nancy's going to be doing a demonstration on how to make log cabins in a super simple way, easy ways to remember which piece to put into your log cabin block next. And she's going to be doing a full demo. So thank you, Nancy, and I'm going to let you take it away.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Allison. So, you know, being live is sort of my nightmare. So bear with me. I'm going to work at this as I can. In the post that we put out on the website, you noticed that there was this picture of these pieces standing alongside of the block. They're laid out that way for you to take a look. You can see that there's a short one. The next one grows by 1.5 inches. This one is the same as this one, and then this one grows by 1.5 inches, and then it has a partner in another color, and they build across. What I wanted you to see is, and the reason that I laid them out, if you have your pieces cut, and you just take these and stack them one on top of the other in the order that you've laid them out here, and you clip them together. When you sit down at your machine to sew, the next piece that you're going to be adding on is right there. There's no thinking about it. There's no challenge. Which way did I go? Did I miss the one? Stack them up. You can do this individual blocks, or you can do this by having a row of, I chain piece my blocks, and so I have 3 or 4 of these stacks beside. And I always can tell which one I've already sewed and which one I haven't sewed, which one is next. So that's part of what I wanted to share with you here. The order in which you sew a log cabin is important. That was wrong. The order in which you pick up the pieces help you to stay orderly in sewing your log cabin so that you're always on the next right one. Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about cutting. When you're cutting your log cabin, it really is critical to have good cuts. You can't have an extra 1/8 of an inch or an extra 1/4 of an inch. When you're cutting, you need to cut and cut well. Everybody cuts differently. I don't use my ruler as my cutting line. I mean, I don't use my mat as my cutting line. I use a ruler. So if I need, my first strip is 2 inches by 3.5. I take my ruler and lay it at the edge of my strip, and I go in and cut it off at 3.5. The rulers are much more consistent than the mat when you're talking about cutting and cutting and cutting and cutting. So,
Nancy, do you want me to do a close-up of that? So I can bring this over here and we can show what, if you lay your fabric down.
well, so when I have my strip of fabric, I will take the side of my ruler and lay it at the edge. Well, I've got to do it the other way. I'm cutting in from this side, so I'm looking for my 3.5 inch mark right here, and I'm cutting according to the ruler edge. I'm not laying it on the ruler and looking for 3.5 inches and trying to line up my ruler according to the mat. I let the ruler do all of the measuring for me, and the edge on the ruler is very consistent, and I cut my pieces off.
Beautiful, thank you.
Thank you. Now, I'm going to take a half a minute and pull these off so that we can start constructing a block.
And if anybody has any questions about anything that Nancy's doing, feel free to type in your questions. She's not seeing the comments, but I am going to be letting her know what everybody is commenting and what everybody is asking about. And hi, Kathleen. Thanks for joining us this morning.
All right. Now I'm going to be pointing out a couple of things. I mean, I know you can't see me. I'm going to have to work from this side. How's that? I'm going to be pointing out a couple of things that are going to make it monumental in your brain as to you're on the right path. So when we look, there's our first square. The first piece we need to add to that is a 2" by 3½. I know in order to sew it, I've got to sew it to the right because that's where the needle is, right? So we're going to sew that on, and we've got that piece sewn. Now, you know the 3 R's in school of reading, writing, and arithmetic? We've got 3 R's in a log cabin. We're going to remember to rotate right. So your log cabin is always going to rotate right. So I'm going to rotate right. And that's the next side I'm going to sew on. You're going to hate me by the end of the day because that's going to be stuck in your head. I'm sorry. So there's the next piece we're going to add on here. So now we look like this. And what did we say? Remember to rotate right. So we're going to go this way. We'll add our next piece on. Now, something magical happens when we get to this point. Remember to rotate right. And the next piece is going to go on right here on the right. But there's a little secret I'm going to share with you. Do you notice here that these make the letter C? And it's open on this end. Notice that up here on this line we have 2 fabrics represented. Notice down this side we have 2 fabrics represented. And across the bottom we have 1 fabric represented. But on this right side where we're going to stitch, we have 1, 2, 3 fabrics represented. This point on, every rotate right that you do, every side that you stitch is going to have 3 fabrics. And the other sides are going to have 2 or 1. So this is your trigger that you're in the right place to stitch your next piece of fabric as you go along. So now we've got this piece finished. Now, we can sit here and say, remember, rotate right. But if you look, you'll know you're in the wrong position and you have to turn because here you have 3 fabrics represented. Here you have 2, here you have 2, and here you have 1. The side that has 3 fabrics represented is the side that you are going to stitch on. So, we've already rotated. This is what will go on here. Remember, rotate right, or look for the place where you have 3 fabrics represented. Now you see, you can get up and take a bathroom break while you're sewing your log cabin. You can go get a cup of coffee. You can do all the things that you need to do because you know when you come back what you got to look for to see if you're sewing in the right place. So, we are at, I messed up my pieces, you see? I got 2 engaged here. What am I looking for? I'm looking for a white. I'm looking for a white that's going to fit into that space, and it should have, had I not pulled my pile apart, it would have been right there for me.
And Nancy, one of the other things you said about where your fabric is right now, it looks like a C shape.
Yes.
So you've got the 3 fabrics on the right-hand side when you've rotated it right, but then everything on the left is going to form a C around the middle that you've already made.
That's correct. That's correct. That's exactly what's going to happen. So you see what's happening here. We've got a distinct pattern happening. You've got 2 cues. Remember, rotate right, or you've got the place where you have 3 fabrics represented. So now, what I want to tell you a little bit about, remember I told you that cutting was critical, that it's really important that your pieces are cut the right lengths. The other really important thing is, and as quilters, you're going to know what I'm talking about. We run into this all the time. Your pieces, when you're sewing them, need to start at the end, and they need to meet up at the end. They can't have this little 1/8 of an inch that didn't make it to the end. Oh, well, it doesn't quite fit. They have to fit, because with your log cabin, you're continually adding around. And if you get around to the other side, and this piece is 1/8 of an inch up, and you're trying to get the second piece sewn on here to fit, you're going to create a little bubble in your piece. Doesn't sound like a big deal, and if you're only sewing 1 strip, it probably isn't. But as you are continually sewing strips around the edge, you're going to end up with bubble, 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 and then your block is not going to lay flat for you to be able to piece your block together. You're going to have this little bubble that pops up in the center. So that's really, really important to make sure your pieces go to the end. Now, how do we do that? So when you're doing this, when you're sewing this piece on here, I'm
going to come closer, Nancy.
First, I use lead. Well, I need to get the other piece. Okay. First, I use leaders. I didn't know. Bonnie Hunter is the leader guru. A leader is a little piece of fabric that you put under your presser foot, drop your needle down, and stitch off the edge of the leader. And then you can lift your presser foot up, and you can slide this in so it comes right up to your needle, and your 2 pieces of fabric are together. You don't need a pin there, it'll get in the way. You're going to push this right up to your needle and start stitching. Do about 2 or 3 stitches down. And then take this one and take a straight pin, which were right here, that I don't see them, so I'll use a clip. So this has already started to stitch. All right, this one looks like it's going to be about 1/8 of an inch off. I'm going to take a pin, and I'm going to bring this down to this edge and line it up. And then I'm going to ease, and I'm not going to stretch and pull, because if I have to stretch and pull, that means I cut my piece too short, or my seam allowance on the other side is not 1/4 inch. My seam allowance is smaller or bigger. If it comes off the edge, my seam allowance is bigger. If it doesn't reach, I'm sorry, it's smaller. If it doesn't reach, that means my seam allowance is too big. And you need to go back and check to see if you've got the right seam allowance. Now, of course, you want to do that before you start sewing, not after you start sewing. So, but this little pin here and easing this down will keep your pieces pretty flat. All right, we are not pressing this block until we get all the way to the end. What we are going to do, okay, so we're going to finger press, and a lot of people are uncomfortable with finger pressing. There are multiple tools out in the market, multiple tools. They look like long pencils, or there's a roller one. I find that one awkward, but there's a lot of people that like it, they use it. But you're going to finger press your seam. And if you do a decent job of finger pressing your seam, see, these have not been ironed. These have not been pressed with an iron. They've just been finger pressed.
And Nancy, I have to say, when I learned to quilt, that was a big no-no. So this is different than
what was a big no-no?
Finger pressing.
Oh,
or like not pressing
right.
as you go.
Well, and there are some blocks that you will press as you go. What happens with the log cabin, and thank you for saying it that way, Because what happens is if you take the iron and you start pressing these as you go, there is all of this potential to stretch this piece, to make it go out of shape. If you start here with these pieces going out of shape, because you see, this has bias. This edge has bias because we've cut on the straight grain. So these here, this has bias. You see how that can pull? Okay. When you take an iron and you press on that, your seam is going to stay here and your seam is going to lay flat. But this, the iron is going to take this and bow it out. So you're going to start having little tiny bows in your piece of fabric. So as you go around, every time you add that and you sew to the edge here and put your seam here, you're going to start having this thing that comes out looking like a half circle. It's going to bow out. So finger pressing keeps you from pushing on this edge all the way through.
And you're always going to finger press your seams out away from the center.
Everything presses away from the center. That's correct. Everything presses away from the center. This is one of those blocks where your back should look almost as good as your front. Okay.
Wow.
And it sounds like a real challenge in perfection, and it's not. If you just think about what you're doing, just keep the iron away from it until it's done. Finger press, line your pieces up using a little pin to get you from one end to the other. Start, I mean, if leaders are not a part of what you do already, give it a shot. If you don't like it and you have success with lining this up to the tip of your needle, because when you start stitching a row, your feed dogs will grab your fabric. That's their job. Your feed dogs underneath your presser foot are going to grab your fabric. And sometimes they will grab the fabric faster than the presser foot will keep up with it to bring it through. And so it's not anything that you're doing wrong. It's the workings of the piece of equipment. If you can get a leader in there to take care of that piece, raise your presser foot and put your fabric all the way into the tip of your needle, and then drop your feed dogs down. They're going to grab at the same time because all of that pre-work of that feed dog pulling the fabric in is already done with your leader. Okay? So by the time we get all the way around the block, this is the block we have. And this block has not been pressed. So this is going to be a bit awkward in trying to show you, but I want you to see when you press your log cabin, you are going to press from the center out. Allison, this might be a place where you could come up with the camera.
Sure.
Let me get this out of the way.
Folks, I want to say that we have people watching from all over the country, and I'm so glad that you all are here to see Nancy's demo. She's been teaching with us for a while, and she's an absolutely wonderful teacher. So thank you very much for joining us.
Okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to start here. Do not press the tip of your iron against the seam. You're kind of going lightly over it so the iron will slide. But you're going to press from the center out. And it's a gentle press because you finger pressed it already. It doesn't need a lot of work. But you're working again from the center out. And if you, I don't know if you get it close enough, but when I pressed it, when I first pressed it, you could see the fabric move. So I have another block. Let's do it again. None of these have been pressed. So let's look at this again. You can see that these are all laying pretty flat. You can see that they're kind of bubbling. You can see this one bows a little bit here. That's normal. It's going to happen and it's workable. From the center out. And you notice there's a difference between pressing and ironing. Ironing is putting the iron down and going back and forth. We are not going to do that. We are pressing from the center out.
Nancy, we have a question about the color options in the blocks. Rena said all the blocks are supposed to have that red strip in the blue section. I thought the blocks were supposed to be blue on one side, whites and creams on the other side, reds on one side, cream and white on the other side. Are they supposed to mix the red and the blue like this, or for the national block, or does it?
Okay, so
or should we talk about that in a little bit?
Well, that's Jimmy. Just about a minute. We're just about finished here, and then we're going to talk about the patterns and the colors and how to read them and
Sounds
how they
good,
work.
Rena. We will get right back to your question about the colors.
Okay. So, I think we're good. All right. So, posted on the website is this picture of the blocks and color schemes. Over here are the cutting sizes that you need.
And this is on the Quilts of Valor website?
This is on the Quilts of Valor website.
Okay.
It's right on the main page, right on the front page. For myself, because my eyes go crazy when I do this, I actually highlighted the color blocks so that when I'm cutting and I need to go back and refer quickly, if I'm cutting the cream, I know it's not highlighted. If I'm cutting the colors, I've got it highlighted so I know where it's just a placekeeper for me. Now, I want to explain this in a way that is comprehensible. And if you have a question about it after I finish, you let me know. We have two situations going on here. We have a national block drive where you, the volunteer, would like to make and donate blocks to be sewn into a quilt for a veteran. And then we have you, the quilter, who wants to make blocks and make your own red, white, and blue Quilt of Valor to be awarded to veterans in your area. And we're working with two different criteria because of that. When we are talking about donating blocks to the National Block Drive, we need to find some level of conformity that when I get blocks from California and I get blocks from Maine and I get blocks from Arizona or wherever they come from, that each of these blocks has some level of conformity, so when we put them into the quilt top for a veteran, it doesn't look like we pulled into a rag bag and pulled out every piece of fabric that we had and sewed it into a block, and then we put them together. So the conformity here for donated blocks is we're going to have red square centers in the donated blocks. These are the three blocks that we're not going to not take anything, but the blocks that come in with the level of conformity will get sewn into a quilt and awarded to a veteran in no time flat. Those blocks that we have to wait for other blocks to come in that are compatible with them, that's what we do. It's not that we won't use your blocks. It's that the most rapid use of your block is if every block that comes in the door has some level of conformity so that it doesn't look like we just pulled and threw together. That's what we need. So the blocks we've chosen are an all blue block with a red center, an all red block with a red center, and a blue, red, blue block with a red center. If you look at the patterns that were published on the website as well, those patterns use these blocks. If you're making a quilt and you're going to make a Quilt of Valor and use it in your area, you can do anything you want with these blocks. The blocks are a suggestion for you as to how to build your log cabin. Log cabins are intended to be scrappy quilts. They're intended to not be perfectly aligned and beautiful. But when you get scrappy, you know there's a level at which too scrappy is too scrappy, and there's no uniformity to it. And our veterans deserve more than that. We want them to receive beautiful, well-planned quilts. So, answering your question, we do have red on one side, white on the other side, or we have red and blue on one side and white on the other side, or we have all blue on one side and white on the other side. I've had emails from people who got all excited about that little red center square because it's 3.5 inches, which is large for a log cabin center. But it's a focal point in the quilt in order for us to bring it together. But of people that are all excited about being able to do half square triangles in the center, using up scraps that they have, to make other different little blocks, make a floor patch in the center. And all of those are very exciting, very usable, very wonderful, but not for the donated blocks. For the donated blocks, we need this level of conformity so that we can make them all work together. Now, on the patterns on the website, you will see on the left-hand side is the general strip cutting instructions. That is exactly what is here on this page. We just reduced it and fit it in so that it was handy for you right here. On the right-hand side of the page, you have these are the instructions for what else needs to be in here. These are how many strips you need. Now, I've had emails ask me about sending out required yardage. The fact is, log cabins are intended to be scrappy. I don't expect you to buy all of the same. And I know all of my models are very programmed. They are because they're models and they need to go out that way. This tells you how many 2-inch strips you will need. My encouragement is, if you're buying fabric as opposed to going into your stash, that you buy an extra couple of inches in case your cutting is different than mine, or in case you make an error in your cutting and you need to adjust and cut another. But these are recommended number of strips you need for your block. Anything that requires other building, like the Welcome Home quilt, the tells you exactly what you need for pieces. So you're not going to find on the patterns anywhere a required yardage. It's going to tell you how many strips you need to build your log cabin, or what the pieces are you need to build that rest of your quilt. How are we doing, Allison?
We're doing great. Somebody
Okay.
asked, what is the Quilts of Valor website? And that website is www.qovf.org. It stands for Quilts of Valor Foundation. And that's where Nancy's talking about. You can get all of these patterns and the information for the National Block Drive.
You can't quite get all of the patterns, Allison.
I'm sorry.
If you notice standing behind me, when I asked Allison, I have to tell you, Thomas's has been the most wonderful quilt shop for our group. I can come to her with any harebrained scheme, and she will sit down and talk with me, and we will make it a reality. So we are as grateful to be a part of her unit as she is to be a part of ours. When I was talking to her about doing this Facebook program, and the quilts that were made, which she'd already seen on the website because she's just on top of it, she told me that she had this panel in the shop, and did I want to play with her panel? And I said, well, the kids want to play in a sandbox. Of course I wanted to play with her panel. And so we designed this quilt for this panel. It hasn't hit the website yet. It probably won't hit the website for a while because Allison ordered some extra panels, and they will be available. You can contact Thomas's Sewing Center in Lexington, Kentucky. There are two, so you'll need to, it's Thomas's Sewing Center, Lexington, Kentucky. But she's going to have these panels available for sale, and the pattern will be sent out via email. I think that's how it's gone, right?
Yes, and we have some available on our website right now, and I'm going to post a link for you all to purchase it here in the comments.
Okay, so, and then, so the pattern is almost finished written. And so she will have the pattern in her hands by Monday, and those of you who order a panel, purchase a panel, she will email you the pattern that goes with this quilt. It was my greatest pleasure to do this for Thomas's. I just love doing it. So the other quilt that's here and represented, because I think it's one of my favorites that I put together, is the Welcome Home. And this is just one of those that people, you can notice that I have the embroidery here, which I don't, it's not in the picture on the pattern. But one of the gals in my group, Diane, I said, Diane, you have an embroidery machine? She said, I do. And I said, well, this is what I need. And she said, okay. And she brought me over 5. So I'm blessed. I'm really blessed with the people in my group. They, like Ellison, I get a whim and they just fly with it. And so, but this is one of my favorites because I love houses. So we built this Welcome Home, and this is on this is on the website, along with other patterns. There were a dozen patterns on there, and there'll be more patterns added probably over the next couple of months. I'll be adding more. Who knew you could do so much with a log cabin? Okay, so I mean that's really what I had to share with you this morning.
I have another question, Nancy.
Okay.
Can the donated blocks be scrappy? Like, can they be different shades of blue, different shades of red?
Absolutely, as long as they follow the general prescribed. These are red blocks, these are blue blocks, and these are the blue with the red in the center of the two. And all of them have to have the red center square. But please go, I really want you to dig into your scrappies. And I want you to have a good time with it.
So if you all have any other questions, we're going to jump off of the Facebook Live, but feel free to keep commenting. We're going to be monitoring your comments. Let us know if you know, what questions you have. I am going to post a link so that you can purchase the panel. We do have some in stock right now, but I have more panels on the way. And then, like Nancy said, whenever somebody purchases the panel, we will send you an email with the pattern so that you can make this quilt. And it turned out absolutely beautifully. We are so pleased with the quilt. And also from Thomas Sewing Center, this is one of our favorite things that we do, hosting the monthly sew-alongs and working with Quilts of Valor. It is such a worthy cause, and I think we all know somebody who has served in the military, and they more than deserve our support and to be hugged with a quilt. So thank you all so much for joining us this morning, and we hope, if you are not involved in Quilts of Valor also, it is totally free to sign up. It is completely volunteer-based. So please get in touch with us.
My email address.
Yes, and Nancy, what is your email address?
Nancy.Cann, C-A-N-N, @QOVF.org. If you have questions about becoming a member, you can email me, or you can email membership @QOVF.org, and our wonderful membership person, Teresa, will be there to help you get along. We'll get you affiliated with the group and get you going.
All right, everybody. Thank you. Stay warm and safe, and we'll see you again next time.
Thank you.